Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Sunday, June 7th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We're going to continue with our rules retrospective, looking at the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Initiative and Combat Table compiled by David M Prata, version 2.2. Last updated March 19th, 2006. For us, this is part 5 of our ongoing look at this particular document. It's a good one for sure. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to unpack, as they say in the unpacking business. So let's have a look where we are. Well, we're on page 9 of 20. And remember, there's a bunch of source material information and examples after the rules are completed. So page 9 is actually pretty far along. Let's have a quick zoom ahead here. Example of melee on page 11. And that's a busy one because it tries to incorporate all sorts of stuff. And when we get there, that'll be interesting because that takes us through page 16. That's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 6 pages, all of example, right? Then there are some tables which are useful. Tied D6 rolls for initiative. Good to know who goes when, what factors play into it. That's an interesting table there. We'll get into that. High D6 roll versus low D6 roll. Because there's only 2 things. Either you tie or somebody's higher and somebody's lower. Then we've got this interesting illustration for multiple attacks in combat, whether it's claw bite or sword and hand axe, so on and so forth. Multiple attack routines and the timing of all of that stuff. So then, cute little Sutherland. He's grabbed him through in there as a humorous example of how to deal with the rules. There's that list of sources. That's page 20 right there. Right? We've got stuff that goes from, should be 74, 78 with the Holmes stuff there, but 74, Dragon Magazine, rather 88, page 74, 1974. Let me see. I think we should have a Monster Manual in here. Enter Manual 2. There's that. Monster Manual 79. Okay, this is saying 4th edition. So they're using core books, but they're using later editions of the core books. Perhaps that's what he had at hand, but I'm guessing that there's some incorporated errata by the 4th edition of the 1st edition Monster Manual. So 2 years down the line, right? 77, 78, and 79 with the Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, and DMG. And some of the stuff that they were putting into the Player's Handbook, probably more germane, the Dungeon Master's Guide by 79, might have superseded some of the thinking that was in the 77 Monster Manual, given that parts of the Player's Handbook and certainly the Dungeon Master's Guide had not even been written yet. Now notice this is a revised edition also, so he's chosen one that's definitely had some revisions, some errata. So the original 1979 printing, first printing, would have had a few things in there that were slightly off. But then we get into 80, Rogues Gallery. There's a bunch of other little Temple Elemental Evil. There's something in there, and I didn't note where I saw that. But some of this other stuff here are side journals and dragons and stuff, and most of them are used, I'm sure, for the sake of clarification, since obviously the main rules have got to come from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and to some extent Unearthed Arcana, if that's being included in this overall work, which it is, right? So the bulk of what you've got is coming from those two. Probably second tier would be down to Player's Handbook. There's not a lot of combat stuff in there, but remember the original weapons tables, that sort of thing, are in there. Monster manuals obviously have some special information in regard to monsters' initiatives or attacks that would have needed to be incorporated into a document such as this. And then things like From the Sorcerer's Scroll. This is going to be clarification of stuff for sure. Wilderness Survival Guide. Now, the interesting about the survival guides is that they took rules that existed, obviously, in like the Dungeon Master's Guide, and sort of granulated them to the nth degree. They expanded upon, and this is something that wargamers would have loved back in the day, but probably folks just getting into the hobby at that point would have said, why does it need so much detail? You said I could hit. Why do I have to know all this other? Well, yeah, sure. There's always a lot of additional permutations and details that you could add into any. The balance of a sword. Do we want to put that in there? Oh, look, Heath. Heath is popping in from down under on this fine. Well, it's Sunday. It's Sunday at 9:42 a.m. in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I wonder what it is in Adelaide right now. Oh, good morning. There's Todd popping in too. He's in Wisconsin. He's in the same time zone as me. So these are the sources that were used for this document. And I'll just pop up to the front here so you guys can see the beginning of the document again. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Initiative and Combat Table compiled by David M Prata. Version 2.2 from March 19th, 2006. We have moved right along. We skipped ahead to just double check the sources there. But we are on page 9. We are at weapon speed factors in this series and part 5. And I'm going to tell you, we messed around with weapon speed factors. Most of us that were playing when these books started coming out had played Chainmail before there was even a D&D. And we played original Dungeons & Dragons. And we also... 12:12 a.m. Monday. Okay, so it's just turned over into Monday down in Adelaide. Most of us that played then were wargamers first, before RPGs even existed. In fact, we didn't look at Dungeons & Dragons when it came out as if it was a quote-unquote role-playing game. To us, it was a set of wargaming rules. It was just another, I mean, maybe for some it was recognized as a departure from what wargaming was, and certainly it had some differences, but every wargaming rule set had some unique features. Otherwise, people wouldn't have written them. We don't need 20 naval combat rules if they're all going to be exactly the same, right? Somebody comes up with a new way to deal with broadsiding. Somebody has a new way of... Hey, Alexfire, how's it going, buddy? Somebody has a new way of dealing with armor, ship armor. and somebody has a new way of generating hits for different types of guns, then somebody comes out with a new set of naval combat rules. So when 1974 rolls around and there's this new set of rules for use with miniatures, and it's combat rules, and it's an extension of chainmail miniatures wargaming rules, we just look at it as another game, another war game, really, and start to play. And then, of course, it becomes there becomes this awareness in the community that this is something different. Other people start jumping on that bandwagon, chivalry and sorcery. Of course, TSR has to up its own game with things like Metamorphosis Alpha and Boot Hill and other quote-unquote role-playing games. But those early ones, they're all primarily one-on-one combat systems with some sense of character progression. So that's where you had your role-playing in, that you would go out and do these different combat scenarios, like almost like being a SEAL team sent out to do missions, and then when you get back, you come back with more experience than you had, and you get to progress your character and become better at what you do. This is what role-playing was in those early days for most people. Oh, sure, some people did the voices, but everybody did voices when they war-gamed every now and then. You'd throw in what your general was yelling or what some guy was yelling when he was charging at the front of a unit. Just because I pick up the knight on a chessboard and say, nay, doesn't mean I've turned it into a role-playing game. It's still a war game. Now, when does a role-playing game become a role-playing game? Well, I don't know that it matters for what we're talking about here, because these rules are about initiative and combat for one-on-one combat or skirmish level combat with multiple fighters, but each figure representing one. Role-playing doesn't really enter into it. And yet we can see in the narrative and descriptive text, the examples, that there's a definite sense that role-playing had quite a bit to do with it. Right? Would your character do this? Would your character do that? What kind of weapons does your character carry? What sort of armor? What sort of defenses? And what styles of combat are indicative of being this type of character? It makes a difference in role-playing, but it's still a war game, right? So, weapon speed factor. Are we far enough in? We're like 13 minutes in, and I'm just starting to get down to the document, right? Weapon speed factor was something that we messed around with more as a wargaming exercise than in regard to role-playing. I always hear people say, well, why would anybody use any other weapons? Well, when you came out of OD&D, when you came out of original D&D where everything was a D6 for damage and all weapons were essentially the same, except, if you had, say, reach, or if you had ranged weapons, then, or if you had a weapon that you could charge with, or that you could set against a charge, those were the major differences. Weapon speed factors were not, as some people, I think, try to profess, a way of reorganizing the weapons to make them all more role-playing, appealing to role-player ideals. It's, why would anybody carry this weapon over that weapon? Well, yeah, some of them are faster. Some of them do more damage. The bigger the weapon, the harder the hit, right? And that's a big deal. But in practice, the group that I played with the most back in the 70s hardly used this. Tried it, too cumbersome, set it aside, or used some shorthand of it, where the DM could occasionally just adjudicate, you know, you got this slow weapon, this guy's got this, it makes a difference here. We're going to let the dagger get in there first because it makes sense. And nobody argued back then, because if you did, it was a sort of a half-hearted, oh, come on. Well, that's how those work. Okay. And off you'd go. And you'd continue with the game, because not because the DM was God. Gosh, I hate that phrase. But just because this was supposed to be an impartial person adjudicating what was going on in a setting that they understood at least as well as anybody else, if not head and shoulders above everybody else. So this was the point. So did we use weapon speeds? Yeah, we tried them out. There were some groups that used them regularly, and they were hardcore focused on trying to be simulationists and believed this was the ends to that means, or means to that ends, rather. But let's go on. D, weapon speed factor. We've moved beyond spells now. When initiative is tied, weapon speed factors are used to determine who strikes the first blow. Number 1, the opponent with the weapon that has the lower speed factor will strike first, subject to the following conditions. A, the initiative roll must be tied. So see, that's where really the only place where it matters. B, both combatants must be using melee weapons with speed factors. And C, both combatants must have an odd or even number of attacks in the round, as per 7A, uppercase A, above. So here's the example they give. Otis is finally caught up with Rabelar after the latter's reckless freeing of Zugdamoy. The two come to blows. Otis is fighting with a battle axe, while Rabelar wields his longsword +3. Otis, as a 10th level ranger, is allowed 3 attacks every 2 rounds. Rabelar, as a 19th level fighter, is entitled to 2 attacks every round. Therefore, in the first round, they will each have 2 attacks. So we have satisfied number C, and we've satisfied number B. Initiative dice are rolled, tie 3 to 3, that's A. Speed factors are then consulted. Rabelar's longsword, speed factor 5, is faster than Otis's battle axe, speed factor 7, so Rabelar will strike first and third, while Otis will strike second and last. In the second round, however, Otis will have but 1 attack, so initiative and speed factors will be irrelevant. Rabelar will strike first and last, Otis attacking in the middle. Number 2. When weapon speed factor is the determinant of which opponent strikes first in a melee round, there is a chance that one opponent will be entitled to multiple attacks. A, compare the score of the lower factored weapon with that of the higher. B, if the difference is at least twice the factor of the lower, or 5 or more factors in any case, the opponent with the lower factored weapon is entitled to 2 attacks before the opponent with the higher weapon factor is entitled to any attack whatsoever. C, if the difference is 10 or greater, the opponent with the lower factored weapon is entitled to 2 attacks before the opponent with the higher weapon factor is allowed to attack, and 1 further attack at the same time the opponent with the higher speed factor weapon is finally allowed to attack. So 10 or greater. I think we get on to an example. No, we don't. Well, we're going to jump into 3 next. But let's just have a quick once-over on that one. When this weapon speed factor is a determinant of which opponent strikes first in the melee round, there is a chance one opponent will be entitled to multiple attacks. So we're looking at somebody, let's say, with a dagger, which is obviously one of the quickest weapon speed factors you can have. And then we're looking at, say, somebody with a two-handed sword. And those differences are so vast that obviously there's going to be multiple attacks with one weapon before the other. So I'm just going to pull out my first edition I got to get my other glasses. Pardon me, folks, while the old man finds his specs that lets him read small text, because that's important. Pardon me while I rub the mic a little bit too. All right, there we go. All right, so I was just picking two things that are fairly far apart. Speed factor on a two-handed sword is 10. Speed factor on a dagger is 2. So, as we know, sorry about the noise. I should just click this baby when I'm in that. Alright, got everything adjusted. When the speed factor is determinative of which opponent strikes first in the melee round, the chance one opponent will be entitled to multiple attack. Compare the score of the lower factored weapon with that of the higher. 2 versus 10 in this case. B, if the difference is at least twice or 5 or more factors in any case, the opponent with the lower factor is entitled to 2 attacks before. And so there you go. If the difference is 10 or greater, in this case it's 9. Right? And the pike all being a 13, for instance, would be a situation where the dagger would then get 2 attacks ahead and then 1 additional attack simultaneous with the pike all wielder. So there we go. Moving on. Number 3. The DMGN is the guide to the game, not the god. I, too, don't like that phrase. There you go, Heath. I hear you, man. Absolutely. It's a fundamental misunderstanding that creates an adversarial relationship between the players and the person running the game. And that's not the way I believe games should be run. A game is a game because it's a level playing field. People bring what they bring to the table, and if you need somebody to officiate that game should be officiated by a neutral party, a facilitator who can make sure that everybody has an equal footing. Because let's face it, I never run out of monsters. If I'm looking to be adversarial, you don't have a chance. So when people suggest that I'm out to get them in a game, I say, sorry, if I was out to get you, you'd already be gone. Just makes no sense. So don't think of it that way. Don't let that cloud your judgment of what you're going to do in game. Look at you against the world. Don't look at you against the DM. Note that speed factor considerations are not applicable when either closing or charging to melee, but after an initial round of combat, or in cases where closing charging was not necessary, the speed factor considerations are applicable. Alright, there's a big old example here. I'll read it. Zagig, amused by all his pointless bickering, plucks Tensor, Otis, and Robilar out of the space-time continuum and drops him into a demi-plane of his own devising at a time in the past when they were all first level. He gives Tensor a dagger, Otis a club, and Robilar an all-pike. There we go. Also loads the mystical dice of fate such that the 3 always tie for initiative. Then he sits back to watch. In the first round, the reluctant combatants close to striking distance with no melee no melee takes place. In the second round, a comparison of weapon lengths determines who strikes first. Rabelar's pike is first, followed by Otis's club. That's 18 feet, 3 feet, and finally Tenser's dagger, 15 inches. In this case, inch not being 10-foot increments, but actual inches. Speed factors are not considered per 1 and 2 above, as this was the first round of combat after closing. In round 3, however, with initiative tied, the speed factor rules apply because there is a 10-point difference in speed factor between Tenser's dagger and Rabelar's pike. Tenser is allowed to attack twice before Rabelar, and once more at the same time as Rabelar. The difference between Rabelar's pike and Otis's club is 9, because difference 9 is at least twice the lower factor, or 5 more in any case. Otis can also attack twice before Rabelar, although without the benefit of a third attack as Tenser has. Thus, the attack sequence this round is Tenser Otis, Tenser Otis, Tenser Rabelar. At the end of the round, Zagig loses interest in the whole thing, sends everyone back to their respective place and time, and takes it upon himself to start designing a completely new game system from scratch. The end. Alright, so there you go. I tell you what, we're well along, closing in on the 30-minute mark, and because Example of Melee is a whole new section, I think we will hold off on this until next week. I think it was good to get through weapon speeds, which is a tricky thing if you haven't used them at all. It's tricky enough if you have. It's worth having a good look at them. Holy job of asking, do you really want to do that? Yeah, Heath. Absolutely. A DM's favorite phrase. Do you really want to do that? Is that really what you want to do? Let me see. Now, while I'm at it, I'm going to open up the drawing tally. Week 11. We'll put that down there. Tomorrow, we do a drawing for who won the 13th Warrior DVD. I have not yet determined what will be the prize for this week. So, I will have to add that in. You know what? I should slide this over. I don't have anything on there that nobody knows, but further down the list, there were some people who may have wanted to be, and that's fine. I mean, if you win something in a giveaway, it's got to be transparent, so once you've won, if you accept the prize, who you are is a matter of public record in most states in the United States, and that's all cool. But in any event, Todd and Heath are known here. Lexfire has given me his first name, and that's good. So we have that going for us. And I'll just put that in there too. Where are we at? We are done with that for now. We will save that till next week. Don't forget, we've got ourselves a chance to help out some artists who are out there. Do all your dice find good homes? Did all the dice? Yes, they all got to where they were going. So did the 2 sets of patches that I gave away after that. And now a second 13th Warrior DVD will be going out to somebody from last week. Sarah won the one from the week before. But this last week, I picked up some dice from Cosmo Joe. I don't know if you're familiar with Studio6d6.com. The virtual Con of Champions, I think it went great. We had good turnout for all the events. Um, it was very, very much a freewheeling sort of a. I was able to sandbox a lot more than I thought I was going to be able to. I had stuff set up. If people needed guidance, if people needed to be held by the hand and weren't taking their own initiative to explore and to do things and to find ways to interact with the setting, then I had things to throw them into the deep end of the pool, before things got out of hand. But people jumped all over stuff. It was a great deal of fun. Had as kind of a surprise. Luke Gygax jumped into my game on Sunday, one of my three, and I'll tell you, can always tell a guy who's been playing for years, because he was a take charge, stepped right up, got the group rolling, dealt with some of the obstacles that were inherent in the setting, and moved right along, and it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. I think those guys really enjoyed playing with Luke too. I think that's the first time I've ever DM'd for Luke. I've DM'd for Ernie and a lot for Alex. But Luke, that's the first time I've ever DM'd for Luke. So that was kind of fun, getting a chance to do that. These dice, by the way, Cosmo Joe, Studio 66. Is it Studio 66 or is it 66 Studio? What do you think? I think I better double check so that I get it right. Let's see. I think it's 66 Studio. Yeah. Let's do that. 66 Studio. Yep, there it is. 66 Studio. See, the name of the company on the logo looks like Studio 66, but the website is 66studio.com. They're deep in the planning of Phoenix Con, which will be a convention that happens not long after we get to the other side of this health crisis. Of course, he makes those great tables and does all sorts of fantastic artwork. They have together Victoria and Andy, who is Cosmo Joe, have that great Arpex full-scale dungeon that they unveiled last GaryCon, and we're going to do even bigger this most recent GaryCon and all through the convention season, but that's been put on hold. And I got to say, considering that situation for them, they could use some people picking up stuff. If you go to 66studio.com, go over to Dice and More, and go down to their store and open it up, you will see some very cool stuff. Over in the store, right there. Set of rainbow dice included with every order in June. Look at that. You'll get a free set of rainbow dice just for doing that. These D12s I've been interested in for some time. Look at that. 20% off anyway. So, you get the there it is, the Trap D12, right, which has all these cool things. There's rocks falling on a head, a guy falling in a pit, cloud, there's a spear trap coming out of a hole in the wall and going straight through a stick figure. It's just wonderful. Spear from wall. You get this cool mood dice, which are very nifty. You get these weather dice. Well, you get one of each of the four if you just want one, right? And, well, maybe you want more than one. Give them away as gifts. That's always cool. Very hot. Clouds. Rainy. Sun and wind. And then these treasure dice. These are pretty cool. You can also, by doing that, get in on a website. Where's it at? Let's bring that over here. we'll have a look at the OK Grognard Facebook group. So I posted the other day this kind of mock-up I did from a King Crimson album cover to put the dice in the hands. I thought that was kind of fun. There is a website that you can visit. Showed it off there too, which has tables. It's a GM toolkit, free charts. It is a public group. Anybody can go there. So if you just wanted to use these different tables with your D12s, you could. But really, here's the first one. It's got the ring, the gem, the melee, and then once you've rolled that, then you can roll deeper into what these other things are, right? So if we get a wand, we go down to the wand table, and we can roll a d12, and we can tell what type of wand it is. So this whole group is just full of really cool tables like that. People building different types of wands. Michael Young has a treasure dice, rings, right? So you get a lot more than you would think. You also, of course, have all sorts of other dice there. You get a player's set of dice, crit d20 dice. What I picked up were 10 of each of, oh look, rainbow dice. You get a set of those free, just for placing an order. I picked up a set of 10 fireball dice because they come in sets of 5, right? 2, 5, or 10. So I grabbed 10 dice. You get 2 for 5, 5 for 10, 10 for 20, right? So I grabbed 10 of the fireball dice. I grabbed, what did I grab? Death dice, which are cool. They got these skulls on them, which I thought were pretty neat. And then, oops, am I neglecting my chat? Let me have a look over here. Good dice for good homes. Yep, good to hear. How was your virtual con? Very good. Overall, VTTs are getting used at very high levels for the next few months. No doubt. And my Friday show, Building Virtual Tabletop Adventures, can be helpful with some of that. Electrical damage, that's the other one. So I got fireballs, death dice, and lightning bolt / electrical damage. That's just pretty cool. It's got the lightning bolt on them, right? So those were the 3, but I also got something else because I've always wanted. Where'd they go? Are they way up top? Yeah, I went right past them. I've always wanted the magic missile dice, right? Which are numbered 2 through 5. 2, 3, 4, 5 rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. So it adds the 1 in for you. Now I'm going to have to be careful. I want to get out of the habit of adding those in automatically whenever I roll a magic missile, right? So I'll have to be careful about that. So they had them in 5 different colors, but teal was the one that was most different from all of my dice, because I have the jumbo dice from Koplau, and I've got 3 sets within my player's dice and 4 sets within my DMing dice, or backwards. And the main colors in there, this one looks the least, so it'll be easy to pluck these out. And that just happened to be on its own. So I got 5 of these, which takes me up to a pretty high level. If I get beyond that level, well, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. If I get up to 11th level and need an extra die, then I'm just going to have to wing it. In any event, that's what I got. I got the GMing dice. I got 5 of the magic missile dice. I got 10 of each of those other death, fireball, and lightning bolt. But these are without a doubt the coolest. You should just go get a bunch of these. Get them sent to you. So fantastic. Don't add the 1. Yep. No doubt. No doubt, George. Well, that takes care of that. I showed off these cool tables, right? What else did I want to show off? Oh, one other thing before we go. We've got the old school zine in the works. I'm not sure how long this will take, but I did a mock-up of the cover. I showed it on the OK Grognard Show Facebook group, but I wanted to pop it up here just to give it a little view. Since we're talking first edition combat and rules for initiative, and that's what I mainly run, this will be mainly in that direction. You know how easy it is to convert stuff around, but this will be along those lines. Schedule coming up is to say tomorrow we have the weekly news and giveaway for that 13th Warrior DVD. We'll also announce tomorrow what this week's giveaway item will be. I've got a handful of things in the works that are possible, and I've just got to sort through them and figure out which one would be best. Cartography and world building on Tuesday, campaign discussion on Wednesday, mostly about Grimwald, my own home setting. Crafting and painting on Thursday, building virtual tabletop adventures. It's really adventure building, but with some discussion about how to use it virtually. Mainly on Roll20, since that's what I use. DM cartoon reviews on Saturday. I think we're going to have to slog through that every single week with the Conan the Adventurer reviews, because I did it the first week. YouTube put it on a hold. I disputed it. They came around after a couple of days, let it go through. Can't monetize it, which, who cares? I don't know. I guess Siskel and Ebert can run commercials, but if you review something, YouTube doesn't let you. And that's their business, and I don't care. I'm not looking to monetize it anyway. But when I did the second episode this last Saturday, soon it was up, I think there's some has-bots out there that kind of just constantly do Google search updates for particular words of their IP, and as soon as something pops, they put an automatic report, copyright complaint report, in on YouTube, and when that happens, it has to be reviewed, and if it's like last time, it'll take a couple of days, and then it'll be up. So the previous one's up, and now this one's up, and that's good. Good that they're up. Not good that it takes a couple of days, but what are you going to do? Next Sunday, back to the rules retrospective. We'll be looking at those melee examples. Remember, that's 6 pages. We are unlikely to get through all 6 pages of that unless I were just to read it and not make any comment. And we all know I can't help myself. So I'll be talking about different things that happened back in the day for groups of my own. I'll be talking about where the mindset was back then when they were written compared to where the mindset is now and what we've learned. And, 45 years of game design has come between original D&D and now. There's a lot of different thoughts, and it's hard to sort those sometimes. It's hard to look back at that and think about it in that headspace when so much has come after. It's just very, very difficult to not have some perspective based on more recent events when you look back at something like that. It's not like unfrozen caveman gamer, right? Your technology frightens and scares me, or confuses and frightens me. Is that how it goes? Well, I'll tell you, thank you very much for stopping in here in the Twitch stream chat. To all you fun people, I've got you on the list for the drawing for next week. And Lost Nomad shows up. Hey, what's going on there? All right, we'll add you in too, because we don't say that you can't show up last minute. We only say, whoop, Did I have it over here? All right, there it is. We only say that that you have to chime in during a stream, and it is still during a stream. But maybe you've been lurking for 45 minutes. I don't know. I don't know. That's all I know. Good morning to you. Have a good week, everyone. Yep. Thank you very much, George. We'll take a look at your past VGT adventure videos. Yeah, don't go too far back. Pretty weak sauce in the early ones, buddy. I mean, I'm on episode 82, 83 of the OK Grognard show, and I gotta say, watching some of those old ones, pretty damn painful. So, check on the Friday ones. They're all labeled. And go back, work your way backwards. And when they start getting painful, stop watching. Is that what they always say? If you're using a Q-tip, once you encounter resistance, stop pushing. There you go. That's the rule. If you're checking this out on YouTube, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Make a comment. We're always looking for good feedback. Appreciate everybody who's been taking the time for the OK Grognard show. And have a great week. Bye-bye.